We welcome the newest member of the On3 family, Talia Goodman.
Thank you.
We got a new vertical. It's called Her. Talia, you've been incredibly busy. So for those who don't know, you've been reporting on women's basketball for quite some time. This portal season, have you had even a second to breathe?
No, I definitely haven't. I've been up the late hours of the night when Kiki Iriafen entered. I think it was a 10 p.m. night, which rarely happens. And, commitments through the weekend. It's just there's no sleeping right now. There are some of the biggest names in the country on the board still. Some of them are still up there. And it's just there's no sleep during, portal season.
So Friday, which is really because the grad transfers can put in their paperwork up to Wednesday night that the school is 48 hours. It's like Friday when the clock hits midnight to become Saturday. Do you pop a celebratory beverage like
So I'm going home, so I'll be sleeping. That will be my time to finally sleep.
So what brought you to On3? We started this Her vertical, which you'll be writing a lot about women's basketball, and right now it has never been hotter and never been a more valuable property in terms of eyeballs, people watching, people wanting to learn about the game. But what brought you here?
I mean, obviously I love what you guys do within the college landscape, and I was excited to come join. Obviously, a lot of the recruiting stuff is what I think women's basketball needs more interest in, right? I think there's not a lot out there. ESPN has their kind of top rankings, but there's nothing like the database that you guys have for men's sports. And so I was excited to get on board with that and start doing some features, doing some pieces for you.
Well, and that's what I think is the most interesting thing about what's happened in the past year or so, especially with the way, not just the way the game gets covered, but the way the game gets talked about. And it was funny to me, like as you got into the Iowa LSU Elite Eight game and the lead up to that, it sounded the discourse a lot more like it does for any of the men's sports that we normally talk about, where it was less about, oh, isn't it great that women's basketball is having this moment? It was, well, I'm a Caitlin Clark person. Well, I'm an Angel Reese person. So and it's funny because, when we talk about that stuff, like when it's JJ McCarthy versus Jalen Milroe in the Rose Bowl, we're like, the Milroe fans, but JJ McCarthy's a bum. Yeah. And so you get Caitlin Clark's a bum. I feel like, well, you can't say that about Caitlin.
Yeah, no. So my funny story about that game actually is I was there. I was there for the whole Sweet 16 Elite Eight, and I was supposed to leave the day before that game because my parents told me I had to get back for classes because I had missed too many classes. And I was like, okay, fine. Like I had accepted it. We didn't know it was going to be Iowa LSU.
Wait. Before we say this, your parents said this. Yeah. Your dad is Jeff Goodman, who covers college basketball.
Which is why
I understand the job is more important.
I was able to convince him, but some of my classes have these like really strict attendance policies, and I'm taking French and such where they don't understand the caliber of game that Iowa LSU is, right? They don't get it. So I last minute, the day of the game, I think I called my dad crying and was like, I need to be here for this. Like this is going to be like one of the biggest moments in women's basketball history, and if I'm not here for this, I will never forgive you. So they let me stay. I watched the game. It was one of the best, moments of my kind of young career here, getting to be in person for that.
And then South Carolina and Dawn Staley show that, hey, you can have a great player,
right?
A generationally great player, but that's hard to beat a great team when you have that much talent stacked around. And that's I'm fascinated by this. I want to get your take on this because I covered University of Tennessee for my first beat out of college, and this is Pat Summitt. Right. She's not at the height of her powers anymore, but she's still really good. But Gino is dominating at UConn. And it felt at the time like, okay, is anybody else going to be able to do anything in this sport? Because you'd have the occasional good, like Muffet McGraw would have a good season at Notre Dame, or Tara Vanderveer would have a special team at Stanford. But could anybody else come in and dominate like that? Dawn Staley has, and it feels like she's doing it in a time that's even tougher to do it because the talent is spreading out more.
Yeah, no, she's incredible. What she does, like X's and O's wise, recruiting, like she just manages to get the right players in her team. Like it's not always, it's about best fit for her. It's not, you see the flashy name and you want them there. It's you find the best fit for your team, and look where that got her. An undefeated season, another national title. They're just incredible, and I think they have a real chance to do it again next year.
Well, and that, so we're going to watch that. I'm sure we'll have is South Carolina being this good bad for the sport debate like we did with UConn. But I'm curious, you wrote this on Wednesday about what's next. How do you capitalize on the post Caitlin Clark boom? And obviously, like, Juju Watkins is a star at USC, but who are some of the other stars that we're going to see emerge over the next year or so that can kind of fill where Caitlin was, where Angel Reese was, where Cameron Brink was?
Yeah, well, I hate to go back to UConn, I know, but I think Paige Becker.
Paige is still there.
Yeah, I think she's going to be the biggest story next year. I think she'll, compete with Juju for that top spot in media coverage, just because of her story and the injuries she's had to face and what she's been going through, and the real chance that they have to win a title next year. She's one. Then if you want to go, the younger players who are on the come up, obviously there's Hannah Hidalgo over at Notre Dame, who's incredible. I mean, led the country in steals last year, and is just such a fun player to watch. And then Audie Crooks is another. She was a freshman last year, and she is just awesome. Like, she was my favorite player to watch last year, and she's so much fun, and she's only going to get better from here. And they have another, they have Addie Brown over there too, who's another great freshman. So there is not, a shortage of really, really exciting and fun players to watch in women's college basketball.
And a lot of these really good players have been moving in the transfer portal. We talked before we started recording, because in the men's game, you've seen some important players move, but you've also seen a lot more role player types. It feels like there have been quite a few players in the women's game that can change the team that they're going to's fortunes immediately when they get there. Who are some of the ones that will be the biggest impacts come next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lucy Olson is definitely a big one. She was, third in scoring in the country, and at a good Villanova team who's historically really great. And coming to Iowa, and I know, you can't fill the Caitlin Clark shoes, right? You can't do it. But if you wanted someone to try, it would be her. It would definitely be her. And I think Haley Van Lith is another really interesting one. TCU is kind of loading up over there, and she was great at Louisville, went to LSU and struggled a little bit playing out of position. She wants to get back in position. So I think TCU will be a good spot for her and could really elevate TCU into a top 25 team, in my opinion, where they were not that without her.
Poor Haley Van Lith. I'm probably having nightmares about Kim Mulkey leaving her one-on-one on Caitlin Clark for the majority of that game. That was painful.
Yeah, I felt a great player, though. It didn't showcase, like, she really is a great player and can make a choice on a team.
Well, and she was so good at Louisville, and it just seemed like she wasn't the right fit there. Well, and I'm curious, because we've seen this. We've seen this in pro free agency and in the transfer portal. Going to what you think is the best situation, or trying to form the super team, and then you're not fitting the role you should be in.
Yeah, that was LSU in a nutshell last season. And so I think another situation that I don't think we'll end up like that, but Brenda Freese and Maryland have gotten like an insane caliber of transfers this offseason. And so that's definitely something to look at. She's a phenomenal head coach, and she'll make it work with them. And they're not the level of stars that maybe LSU got last year, but there definitely is a danger to that, where, you have a bunch of these women coming in and they think, they're the best player on the court because they were where they came from, right? So it's definitely interesting. I think coaches have learned from the past few years as the portal has kind of escalated.
How much is realignment affecting that? We see it in football where they're gravitating toward the Big Ten and the SEC.
A lot.
Basketball, a little different, because obviously, like on the men's side, the Big East is still considered very much a power conference. But in the women's game, is it similar to football, where the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of sucking up the oxygen?
It's you really see Oregon State struggling right now. That's the big one.
Yeah,
it's hard. Like, their best players are leaving. Reagan Beer is going to Oklahoma. Talia Van Olhoffen is going to USC and kind of joining their little super team that they have there now. But it's been really a tough offseason for them, and you feel for them because they were I saw them in the tournament this year. They were phenomenal, like so much fun to watch, and they had so much potential, and realignment just kind of ruined it for them, which just sucks. But they're the big one that's being suffering. There are a few others for sure, but they're the big one.
Do you think Fox Big Ten Network, that whole group takes advantage of having Juju Watkins and USC. I mean, that seems to be the team that we're going to get pushed into our feeds the most often next year.
I hope so, for sure. And another thing, I mentioned this in my story, but the Big East uses flow hoops a lot, and there's a team called UConn in the Big East, which worries me a little bit. They also have Villanova, Creighton. Like, there are great teams in the Big East. So I think accessibility is kind of the focal point of it for me, is making sure that these women are on TV, because people will enjoy them if they're on. It's just hard to see them sometimes. So I think they will take advantage of that.
And there was always this chicken egg argument about, if you covered it more, people will watch it more. And if you said, well, no, people aren't watching, which is why we're not covering it more. I don't think you can have that argument anymore, because I think what we saw last year is when the product is good,
yes,
people are going to watch.
Exactly. Just like any other sport.
Yeah. Were you surprised though? Like when you saw the numbers off the LSU Iowa Elite 8 game or the national championship game? I mean, those were huge,
right?
Huge numbers.
I had hoped they would be. I was surprised at the Elite 8 game. And then after that, I wasn't surprised at the title game, because you saw like what the fans could really do. And obviously the matchups are a little bit different in the personalities clashing and all that, of course. But I wouldn't say I was surprised. I was very glad to see it, and I was hopeful that would happen. Maybe a little surprised at just the caliber of it. But
so I do have a question. So you are attacking this coverage in a different way than a lot of people who've covered women's basketball. Like you said, you're attacking it more of newsbreaker, very recruiting focused, very, a lot of the news in the portal, which is similar to the way we at On3 and the recruiting sites have covered college football and men's college basketball. How did you decide to do it that way? Because there wasn't anybody really doing that.
That is how I decided to do that. There was no one doing it. I was looking for that information myself, just as a reporter. I was an Indiana women's basketball beat reporter because I go here, and I'm looking for information, right? I'm trying to find it during the off season. There's nothing. Like, no one's breaking. There are some people getting into it now. Don't get me wrong, and there are some great people getting into it now. But there's really no like one source to follow for these kind of things. And so I was like, all right, if no one's doing it, I guess I will. Like, I guess I'll take that, right? And I love like the traditional kind of reporting too, as far as features and analysis goes. But I think it's really important to have a newsbreaker in women's basketball.
Well, and we are glad that we have you, because between you and Pete Nakos and Hayes Fawcett and Joe Tipton, we're going to have it all covered. Like, if players are moving, we got it. And I'm so excited to see what you do here, and just want to say thank you for coming aboard, and hope you don't mind. We'll be bugging you quite a bit as we go forward, but welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, Talia Goodman, you are going to get to read a lot from her. You're going to see her a lot on this channel, and we are very, very excited. The vertical is called Her, and you'll be clicking on it. I guarantee it. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.